I just got this comment under my YouTube video, why Moscow must starve for peace to begin. LOL, solely propaganda and copium, nothing to do with reality. However, when the video starts with a mention of fictitious countries like Moscovia, fictitious country like Moscovia, right. This Moscovia apparently was such a fictitious country that it has left tons of evidence of its existence that I just happen to have collected neatly on this Figma project. One of the first mentioning of Moscovia I have 1526. You can just keep going. La Moscovia Antonia Passivini, where it mentions Moscovia 1549. Herbenstein, he mentions Moscovia and Russia as a separate entities many times, Ruthinica and Moscovitica. So if Muscovites claim that they are Russians, how come so many sources mention not only Moscovia, but mention Russia as being a different? Here, 1553, a source that lists a bunch of countries via comma, and we see Polonia, Lithuania, Russia, Prussia, Moscovia, Dacia, Dania, Kotia, Norway, and Sweden. I don't know what Kotia is, but Norway is spelled really cool. Sweden is Sweden for sure. And we also see Saxonia, Germania, Anglia, Scotia, Hispania, and Francia. And by the way, I have the link to the source right here in my Figma project that anyone can access through my Patreon. Here's Sebastian Münster, another mentioning of Moscovia. Oh, and another separation with Russia. Right here, if we look closer, we also see mentioning of Lithuania and Moscovia. Wow, yeah. This fictitious country, Moscovia, certainly has left a mark in some evidence. Here we have Czech grammar, and we see how it lists different languages, including Ruska, Mazovetska, and Moskovska. Russian language and Moscow language are separated because they are indeed different languages. Okay, the dictionary of Muscovites, Dictionary Moscovita, that also mentions Lingua de Moscovitas. Here we have 1598. Oh, that also mentions, look at that. Russia borders with Muscovites, Livonians, and Lithuanians. And also we see right here, Russia, Moscovia, Livonia, and Lithuania, regions that engage in wars. Just keeps popping up and separate from Russia. How inconvenient for the defenders of the imperial version of history. And here we even have Moscovian Tsar with a picture of himself titled Knyaz Alexei Mikhailovich, Great Duke of Moscovia. All right. What else do we have here from evidence? Le Voyage d'Europe. We also see actually Ukrainian language being mentioned. Also this fictitious Moscovia popping up, La Moscovia. And we also see he's listing what it looks like regions of Ukraine. I see Polesia, I see Volhynia, Podolia, and Black Russia. Mazovia is already Poland. Yeah, it looks like he's listing some regions of Ukraine. And Black Rus, White Rus, and Red Rus, and other colors of Rus, they are not clearly defined meanings. And they were mostly exonyms. Foreigners would be giving those colored labels to Russia. Oh, here's the most famous Tsar of Moscow Empire, Peter I, and he has those pictures of himself. How do you call those pictures? Gravures? Le Grand Duc de Moscovia. This is French. And we see on many of those signatures, Le Grand Duc de Moscovia. Not Le Grand de la Russia. Here, what else? Universal history also mentions start of Muscovy, the Muscovite has come. And this is the Polish source that also separates Russian people from Muscovsky people right here. And I can already predict how many Muscovites jump on this and say, well, those are all foreign mentions. Surprise, surprise, I have tons of evidence just laying around in Cyrillic that mentions Moscovia. Here we have Barkulubov Chronicles that all mention Tsardom of Moscovia. Here we have the collection of diplomatic relationship of Moscow state with other states. Like here we have a collection of laws from Moscow state. Here we have chronicles that mention Moscow state many, many times. When he appeared before the Muscovite people, he said, not a single inch of Moscow land we will give. I don't know how to translate it from top of my head, but here it mentions again Moscow state, kind of like a map of Moscow state, but it's a map that was part of a book that also mentions many times. Moscovia is actually an exonym. Of course, people who lived in Moscovia didn't call their country Moscovia. They were calling their country Moskovskое государство or Moskovskое царство. It's basically how Germans don't call their country as Germany, they call their country Deutschland. So the same thing, it's just an exonym. And Ukrainians don't call their country Ukraine, we call our country Ukraina. Now here's another evidence just lying around, and here's another medal of Peter I that he writes right here. Moscovian Lord right here, Повелитель Moskovsky. Here's Semyon Remezov, who writes Moscow Tsardom right here. Also, I've seen lots of Muscovites saying, oh, no, this is just part of the region. On the edge of the map, it says Chinese Tsardom. So this is literally the name of the country made by this Muscovite map maker, Semyon Remezov. Here we have the most interesting evidence. The first newspaper ever issued in Moscovia was called Ведомости of Moscovian State. And Ведомости kind of translates as columns, as news, basically. News of Moscow State, if I had to crudely translate it, which also mentions Moscow Tsar, Moscow Army, many times, of course. Here we have actual evidence of that the language was called Muscovian language. Right here it says in Cyrillic, language Moscovian, and here it says in Latin, linguam Moscoviticum. Although with language it's a little bit trickier because their language was based on top of Church Slavonic, and Church Slavonic was later started to be calling just Slavonic. So their language for a while was called Slavonic or Slavic language. And only a few decades before the rebranding, the name Moscovian language starts to take root. But then after the rebranding, they changed that to Great Russian dialect of the Russian language, or something like that. Yeah, anyway, here we have coins that say Moscovian ruble. And we have many more denominations that say pretty much the same. And stuff like that, basically. I have just happened to have lying around lots of evidence. Here's an interesting evidence, by the way, that says right here, everybody's printing our state as Moscovia and not Russia. So you got to make sure that everybody is writing Russia. And almost all pieces of my evidence have a link to this source. And we can click on that and we would get redirected to the presidential library of Boris Yeltsin. We can go immediately to that page that was there. 402. Right here, 404. This is where the screenshot I took from, and right here we see the same text right on the official presidential library of Moscow Empire. As I said, almost. And here's the last evidence of a fictionist country of Moscovia. Those two paintings right here, they are called On the Border of the Moscow State, and this one is called Muscovite Raid. The fictionist country of Moscovia looks like was not so fictionist after all. If someone is really interested in history, this is only like a fraction of a percent of all the evidence out there. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention that I have a collection of old maps that is available for you to look at for free. I will paste a link under this video. I went through some of those maps in my episode concerning this subject. Since then, I have updated my collection with more maps, and I guess using this moment, I can't help myself but mention the best map that I have by French Senator Casimir Denis, who writes it as it is, that right here near Moscow, there are Muscovites. Originally, they're Turco-Finnish, but they speak Slavic language. I gotta make another episode about how Turco-Finnish tribes started to speak Slavic languages, but here we also see Ruthenis near Kiev. And of course, he is saying the utmost truth right here on the sidelines. Between the Moscovia and Poland, there lies Russia, whose name Muscovites usurped by conquering them. Like, I don't even need to know French to understand what's going on. Again, I've made a whole episode about that. So let me just mention something that I did mention on my... Oh, here's actually a new map in my collection. And it's interesting because it mentions not only the name of the country, but it mentions the name of people, Muscovites. This map also mentions Ukraine. And of course, on some of the maps that I didn't mention, sometimes we see Russia appearing where Novgorod Republic once was. So Muscovites are really happy and jumping on this, but Russia in this case does not mean the name of state. Here, let me show you what it means on another map, 1952, 1959 Mercator. Actually, that was a question from one of the commentators. All right, here, 1952. Here we have a map by Mercator, and it says Russia in its borders. And here we see in big letters Russia. When we see Russia, especially in the north like this, it's not the name of state, it's the name of the region. For Europeans, for a while, this region was like historically named Russia. It's like almost a geographical label, and you see that it's almost geographical because the word Asia is also written like this. And also you see how everything here in green color, this is what actually Europeans for a long time considered as Russia. This whole region, it has historical basis for this because for several centuries, big chunk of this land was actually controlled by Russia. And we actually see another label, Russia, right here next to Lviv. And of course, we see the actual name of state, Moscovia. When we take the same map maker, Mercator, and if we look at his map of Europe, or if we look at his map of the world, but here's his map of Europe, we no longer see Russia. He no longer puts it there. We only see Moscovia, and we no longer see Russia here next to Lviv. But you also see how the coloring has changed, and you see the actual yellow as what belongs to Moscovia. And right here we also see Europa, the map of Europe, political map of Europe. So right here is the political map of Europe, and right here from the same map maker is the map of historical region of Russia, not Russia. We can follow this logic even further on another map, actually on many maps. I just think some maps portray this beautifully than the rest. Right here is one good map. We see how Russia or dominions of Moscovia in Europe. We see how right next to it Tartary or domains of Muscovy in Asia. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to deduce that Muscovy is the name of state, Europe and Asia is the name of the continent, and Russia and Tartaria is the historical name for the region. And again, as we see, almost identical region is being colored Russia. And we see this trend in Europeans, how they were calling that area from the Arctic Ocean down to the Black Sea. They were continuing to call it Russia, but it was not the name of state. Here's yet another map. Oh, right here. This is the Dutch map. Also says the same thing. Russia Moscovite and then Tartari Moscovite. So it's basically Moscovia in the region of Russia and then Moscovia in the region of Tartari. This is already after the rebranding. I think this is also a new map that I have. Frontiere dell'Empire. The borders of the Moscow Empire. So they already did the rebranding, but Europeans still called them for a while Empire de Moscovite. And of course, there is also right here Black Russia. So as you see, when I was mentioning about the colors, they just vary so dramatically, like red Rus, black Rus, whatever. You never know where it appears. So yeah, this was that. And sometimes we do see, yes, if we see Russia at the very top, we also have to remember that in the very north, as I showed you on this map, the actual Novgorod Republic was part of Russia for a while, and it was independent from Moscovia. It was independent from Moscow, and then it was conquered by Moscow, and Novgorodians were assimilated and genocided, or rather I would say ethnocided. They used to be a separate ethnicity, but now they no longer exist because Muscovites have wiped them from existence. And this is actually the same thing they want to do with Ukrainians. So right here we also see the borders of the Moscow state, and right here up north we see Russia. Again, Russia is not the name of the state in this case. If you wonder, wait a minute, why would Europeans post the name of historical region on the map? Well, this looks like it was a common practice back then. I managed to find, for example, from the same map maker, the historical region of Lotargynia. And then, of course, there are tons of ancient maps of Roman Empire, Romani Imperi. Of course, Roman Empire was long gone, but they kept making maps about it. Romanorum Imperium. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. This was spontaneous, fascinating, analysis of this comment. Let me know if you like this format and if you think I should be making more of this, but I guess I will see how many people view this. And depending on how many people view this, it would be a good indicator of reality. The reality tells me if people perceive it as good or not. Because sometimes you gotta do something not for the result, but because you enjoy it. And it was good enough that I enjoyed making this video and analyzing it like this. And if you enjoyed how I enjoyed this process, that's a combo. Peace through strength.
The greatest trick the Muscovites have ever pulled was convincing the world that they are Russians.